Transport of oxygen. Our learning objectives will be to study about the methods of oxygen transport, the role of hemoglobin in oxygen transport, oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve, and the various factors which affect oxygen dissociation curve. This will be studied in 2 lectures. The first lecture will cover method of oxygen transport and the role of hemoglobin in oxygen transport. Here the partial pressure gradient for the oxygen has been plotted in the graphical form, and here you can see the gas movement of oxygen is flowing downhill. By downhill we mean that there is movement concentration gradient is relatively high in the air, that is 150 or 160 millimeters of mercury, then it is decreasing in the alveoli to 104, and finally into the tissue where it is 4 to 10 millimeters of mercury. So this movement is occurring mainly by the pressure gradient that allows the diffusion of the gases from the alveoli up to the level of tissues. So this decrease in partial pressure of oxygen from the air to the level of cell is known by the name of oxygen cascade. There is unloading of oxygen from the level of air alveoli down to the level of tissues. So how this transport of oxygen is occurring, so we'll be studying this. The transport of oxygen from the lungs to the level of cell, as you can see, is a 3-step process. The first part is the diffusion of oxygen from the alveoli to the pulmonary capillary blood. Next, this oxygen will be carried through the blood, arterial blood, to the level of tissues or the cells, and finally the oxygen will be released to the tissues or the cells by the process of diffusion. Starting with the transport of oxygen, we come to the first step. The first step is the diffusion of oxygen from the alveoli to the pulmonary capillary blood. So here you see a graph that has been taken from Guyton, where an alveolus is lying adjacent to the pulmonary capillary. So what do you see here? The gaseous partial pressure of oxygen in the alveolus is 104 millimeters of the mercury, and near the arterial end it is 40 millimeters of mercury. The partial pressure is low, that is 40 millimeters. Why? Because it has delivered the oxygen to the peripheral tissue and it is now returning to the pulmonary capillary for the uptake of oxygen. At the venous end, when it is leaving the pulmonary capillary, you can see the partial pressure of oxygen is 104. So what do we observe from this is the partial pressure of oxygen at the arterial end is 40. So as soon as the blood is moving through the pulmonary capillary, it is being loaded with the oxygen, and it is being loaded with the oxygen and it reaches the equilibrium with the alveolus when it is reaching just 1/3 of the distance of the pulmonary capillary. So what do you observe? That when the blood is reaching 1/3 the distance, it is already in equilibrium with that of alveolus. Next is the plateau phase, where the oxygen concentration is not changing much. So within 0 to 0.25 seconds, it is attaining the equilibrium with the alveolus oxygen. So this figure is very important. The blood is remaining in the pulmonary capillary for 0.75 seconds, but within 1/3 of the question remains, if oxygen equilibration occurs within 0.25 seconds in a healthy person, meaning that blood becomes almost saturated with oxygen by the time it has passed only 1/3 of the pulmonary capillary, and little oxygen is being added additionally when it is entering the later 2/3 of the transit. So why the blood in the pulmonary capillary stays for 3 times as long as needed for the full oxygenation? What is the reason behind this? This longer stay of the blood beyond equilibration is important in the pulmonary capillary because it provides for the safety factor for diffusion. It is especially important in cases of exercise on diseased lung. So whenever there is a state of exercise, there is an increased cardiac output. This increased cardiac output results in the shortening of the transit time. The blood will stay in the capillary for a shorter time. However, since the safety factor is there, the blood equilibrates in 0.25 seconds and it stays for 0.75 seconds. So even though when this time has been decreased, the equilibration will not suffer and the oxygenation of blood in the pulmonary capillary will not suffer. This is an advantage, a safety factor, especially in cases of exercise or when in a diseased lung it takes a longer period to saturate the oxygen. So this margin provides the safety, hence it is known by the name of safety factor. So the oxygen that has diffused from the alveoli into the pulmonary blood is transported to the tissue capillaries in two major forms. As you can see in this pie chart, the larger proportion is the bound form, that is bound to the hemoglobin, and it is 97 to 98%. The second is the dissolved proportion shown in yellow color, and it is dissolved in plasma and it comprises approximately 2 to 3%. Transport of oxygen in dissolved state comprises only 2 to 3%, and since oxygen is a gas, it obeys the Henry law, which states that amount of gas dissolved in a solution is directly proportional to its partial pressure, which can be stated by this equation, in which the oxygen concentration in a solution is a product of partial pressure of oxygen multiplied by the solubility coefficient, which for oxygen is 0.003 ml per 100 ml per millimeters of mercury at 37 degree of Celsius. So this is seen in this graph. As you can see, the x-axis represent the partial pressure of oxygen. Here you can see it is ranging from 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 and continuing up to 100 millimeters of mercury. So the partial pressure of oxygen is represented on x-axis, and then we move to this column which states the dissolved oxygen per 100 ml of blood. So here the first column is 10 with the partial pressure of 10. We can have this value of dissolved oxygen, that is 10 multiplied by solubility coefficient, that is 0.003, and the value we'll get is 0.03. The next is 20, then the value will be getting 20 multiplied by 0.003, it is 0.06. So we continue in this manner and then we reach to the last column, that is the at the partial pressure of 100. What we are getting? We are getting a value that is 0.3 ml per 100 ml of blood. So this dissolved oxygen in the blood is far too small to meet the metabolic demands of the body. Hence it is normally in a we know that the arterial blood transports 5 ml of oxygen from the lungs to the tissues. It is mainly in the form of bound to the hemoglobin. The dissolved form also contributes in a minimal fashion. As we can see here, the arterial blood carries 0.29 ml of oxygen per 100 ml of the blood, and when it is leaving the tissue, the venous end of the capillary have a oxygen that is 0.12 ml per 100 ml of the blood. So if we want to calculate the amount of oxygen that has been transported by the dissolved form, it will be the difference of the two from the arterial end to the venous end, and we get 0.17 ml, which is the amount which is transported, amount of oxygen which is normally transported in the dissolved state to the tissue by each 100 ml of the arterial blood flow. And as you can see, it is a negligible amount that cannot sustain the metabolic activity of the cell, as we have said earlier. So the question remains, now we know that the oxygen transported in the dissolved form just contributes 2 to 3% of the total transport. As you can also see in this graph, what do we have here? We can see the oxygen concentration per per ml per 100 ml of the blood, it is 20. The total oxygen is content is 20 ml per 100 ml, and the oxygen combined with hemoglobin is approximately 19.5. The majority is being transported in form of combination with hemoglobin, and the dissolved oxygen is just 0.3 ml per 100 ml of the blood. So this dissolved oxygen, do you think has got any significance in the oxygen transport? The oxygen transport that is occurring in the dissolved form is non-saturable, which can also be assessed by this equation, in which the oxygen concentration in the solution is directly proportional to the partial pressure of oxygen, meaning thereby that as the amount of partial pressure of oxygen will increase, then similarly the dissolved form of oxygen will also increase in the plasma. This is very important because the transport of oxygen which is occurring by hemoglobin is saturable. That means beyond a particular point, the hemoglobin cannot get more of the oxygen transport, it becomes saturated, in contrast to the dissolved form which is non-saturable. The more you increase the partial pressure of the oxygen, the more will be the dissolved form. So this is important at the elevated partial pressure of oxygen when a person is breathing 100% oxygen, or during hyperbaric oxygenation, the dissolved form will also increase, and therefore increased oxygen can be delivered to a particular tissue or a particular organ. This is important in cases of treatment of decompression sickness, or also in conditions where there is alteration or there is problem with the hemoglobin and transport of oxygen is not done by hemoglobin. So in this condition, for example carbon monoxide poisoning, this dissolved form of oxygen is very important. Normally approximately 97% of the oxygen is carried with the chemical combination with hemoglobin from the lungs to the tissue. The salient features of such transport mechanisms are that hemoglobin combines with oxygen in a reversible fashion, and secondly the oxygen which is being carried by the hemoglobin is in the molecular form and not the ionic form. The association and the dissociation of the hemoglobin with oxygen occurs within millisecond. This is a very critically fast reaction and it is very important for the oxygen exchange. Therefore, the oxygen which is bound to the ferrous form is bound in a loose manner and in a reversible manner. This process is known by the name of oxygenation and not oxidation. Why? Because the iron which is present in the heme molecule stays in the ferrous form. Therefore, this process is oxygenation process. Now, the molecular structure of hemoglobin comprises of different type of chains. They can be alpha chain, beta, gamma and delta chains. However, in adult hemoglobin we have alpha and beta chain, whereas in fetal hemoglobin we have alpha and gamma chains. So this affinity of binding of oxygen with the hemoglobin depends upon so much on the chains which are present. It has more affinity to bind with the gamma chain as compared to the beta chains. So this has an importance. Then another structure which is present in the hemoglobin is this heme structure, which is a ringed molecule with ferrous form of iron in the center. This can combine, as we said, with the molecular form of oxygen, and since we have these four heme structures which are present in the hemoglobin, therefore it can bind with 4 molecules of oxygen. Now this hemoglobin structure exists in 2 forms depending upon the oxygen binding. For example, when in high partial pressure of oxygen, as can be seen in pulmonary capillaries, oxygen binds with hemoglobin and it exists in an oxygenated form. And when the oxygen partial pressure is low, as can be seen in the tissue capillaries, oxygen is released from the hemoglobin, and then we have this form of hemoglobin which is deoxygenated form, as you can see here. The process of oxygenation occurs in 4 steps, as we can see here. The hemoglobin has 4 molecules of heme, so each molecule of the hemoglobin can combine with as much as 4 molecules of oxygen. One molecule of oxygen is combining with one iron ion which is present on the heme molecule. So do you think there is any change in the affinity of the hemoglobin chain, or it remains the same with each step of oxygenation? Whenever oxygen binds with the hemoglobin at the first step, the affinity of hemoglobin for the oxygen increases with each next step, because the deoxyhemoglobin units were tightly bound with an intense configuration, and now when oxygen binds to it, the configuration is changed and it becomes more favorable for the binding of oxygen. So this phenomena is known by the name of positive cooperativity, or also known by the name of cooperative binding kinetics, and it is easier for oxygen to bind to the heme moieties, and there is a 500-fold increase in the oxygen affinity, and this is also responsible for the sigmoid nature of the oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve. Under the normal physiological circumstances, the hemoglobin that is available for carrying oxygen is not 100%, instead it is 95% because of the various physiological shunts. So the total oxygen content of the blood is the amount of the oxygen which is present in the blood, either in the dissolved form or combined with the hemoglobin. So 0.3 ml per 100 ml is the amount which is present of dissolved oxygen, and 19.5 ml is the oxygen which is combined with the hemoglobin. So on adding both of them together, we get the oxygen content of the blood per 100 ml that amounts to 19.8 ml, and as we can see here, the majority of the oxygen content is contributed by the oxygen form that is bound to the hemoglobin. So this is the oxygen content of the blood. So the importance of this total oxygen content lies in the AV difference, also known by the name of arterial venous oxygen content difference. It is a difference between the oxygen content in the arterial blood and the oxygen content in the venous blood, as can be obtained by this value of 20 minus 15, that is 5 ml per deciliter. This is the amount of oxygen that is being delivered to the tissues to meet up with the metabolic demands. But in cases when the metabolic demand of the tissue is increased, for example, increase is seen in cases of exercise, so the oxygen content to the tissue has to increase. It can be increased by two manner. Either the cardiac output has to increase, because we know cardiac output is the blood flow per minute that is occurring 500 ml per liter per minute. So the oxygen delivered to the tissue is 250 ml per minute. So by increasing the cardiac output, the amount of oxygen delivered to the tissue will increase. And secondly, if there is increased extraction of the oxygen at the level of the tissue itself, that is arteriovenous difference has to increase. So both these conditions will occur and they will help to cope up with the metabolic demands of the tissue. So the total oxygen content is an important indicator for the tissue activity. So the question is, what happens to the different values of oxygen transport in anemia? For example, the partial pressure of oxygen, the oxygen saturation, the oxygen content, and the oxygen carrying capacity. So since anemia is defined as decreased in hemoglobin, so nothing will happen to the partial pressure of oxygen, it will remain normal. Secondly, the oxygen saturation, it is an ability of oxygen to combine with the heme molecule which is present in the hemoglobin, and since there is no deficiency in the oxygen molecule as such. It will combine with whatever hemoglobin is present in all the 4 sites. Therefore, oxygen saturation will also remain normal. The next is the oxygen content. Oxygen content is the amount of oxygen that is carried in dissolved form and bound to hemoglobin. And since the amount of hemoglobin has decreased, therefore the amount that is bound to hemoglobin will also decrease, and therefore the oxygen content will also decrease. Lastly, the oxygen carrying capacity, which is defined as the amount of oxygen that is carried by the hemoglobin. So since hemoglobin content is decreased, it is not 15 grams per deciliter anymore. Therefore, the oxygen carrying capacity will also decrease. So these changes in anemia will result in the clinical signs and symptoms of anemia. And in order to improvise upon the tissue demands in anemia, what will happen? Either the cardiac output will increase, or the second thing that can affect is the increase in the oxygen extraction, thereby reducing the mixed venous oxygen content and the AV difference. Okay, so these are the changes which will occur in anemia. Here you can calculate the hemoglobin saturation, that is the percentage of hemoglobin that combines with oxygen when a patient has hemoglobin of 10 gram per deciliter and the venous oxygen content is 6.5 ml per deciliter. So you can calculate. First, we know that hemoglobin saturation, we have to calculate the oxygen carrying capacity, which is the amount of hemoglobin multiplied by 1.34 ml of oxygen per gram. So we get a value of 13.4 ml of oxygen per deciliter. And the percentage of saturation is defined as oxygen content of the blood per 100 ml divided by the oxygen carrying capacity of the blood into 100. So the oxygen content of the blood, it is given is 6.5 ml divided by the oxygen carrying capacity, that is 13.4, and here we get the oxygen saturation, that is 50%. Here you have to calculate the oxygen content when the patient has an hemoglobin saturation of 60% and a patient has hemoglobin of 15 gram per deciliter. So oxygen content, we know it is the amount of oxygen that is carried in dissolved form and bound to hemoglobin. So the oxygen content will be the amount of oxygen that is bound to hemoglobin, 15 multiplied by 1.34, we get 20 ml of oxygen per deciliter. This is the oxygen carrying capacity, and since it is maximally contributed by the oxygen that is bound to hemoglobin, so we can take this value to be 20 ml of oxygen per deciliter as a total oxygen content. Now the hemoglobin saturation is only 60%. So 60% saturation, with 60% of saturation, the amount of oxygen content in that patient will be 12 ml of oxygen per deciliter.